So, Tashidele, greetings to all of my Dharma friends. Geshe hopes that you are well and he hopes that you are happy. So Geshe hopes that for any of the listeners or the viewers that by hearing some of the things that he is explaining that you come to some benefit. So that is his hope with this talk. So then all of us are in the same situation here, whether we talk about ourselves, whether we talk about others. What we have is a human rebirth, a precious human rebirth right in our hands. So like that, having this opportunity, how to live a good life, how to have things go in a wholesome direction. Geshe will explain some things related to that. And so another thing that is the same, whether we speak about ourselves, whether we speak about others, it is that we call the mind, excuse me, the mind upon which the I is positive. And based upon that mind, there are things that can come forth, potentials that we can activate that are wholesome, and potentials that we can activate that are unwholesome. But if we don't understand how the mind is working as the basis for the coming forth of the positive things that we seek and the negative things that we don't seek, if we don't understand, if we don't know how these things are arising from the mind and how it is the beginning of what is wholesome and what is unwholesome, then we won't know how to guard our mind and how to conduct ourselves. So Geshe will give some advice related to this. So, when we speak about the mind, we need to understand that it is something that is very, very complex and deep. It is complex and profound. And we also understand that within this mind there are positive things that can arise and negative things that can arise. But if we really understand the source that gives rise to these positive and negative things, this source of the mind, then we will be able to identify and decrease what is unwanted. But if we understand the way of things, if we understand how the mind is working, then we will know that when the mind gives rise to appearances that are difficult, that gives rise to appearances that are unpleasant, because we know how the mind is working, how it is functioning, we will be able to understand those appearances and, using that knowledge, dissolve them back into the surface of the mind so that they can't disturb us. So the other thing that is very important to understand is that when these appearances dawn in the mind, and they are incorrect and unwholesome, we have to not mindlessly follow those appearances, because if we follow those unwholesome appearances, if we live our life according to those appearances without understanding them, then not only will we not come to a good or happy result for ourselves, we will not be a source of benefit or happiness for others either.
아니 뭐도 단도 세이나 요소도 야이 강가 기워시에 더 어느 거까지 와.
So, on the other hand, if we understand our way of thinking, if we understand the mind, then we can identify what is unwholesome, and we can cultivate the antidotes to dissolve or to decrease the unwholesome. Similarly, we will be able to recognize what is good, what is wholesome and leads to happiness, and we will be able to increase those thoughts. We will be able to increase those potentials. If we do that, not only will we be able to live our life in a way that is happier, we will be a true source of happiness for others as well. Self, others, even other beings such as animals. We will become a source of comfort and happiness to them.
오다 드리 내치 여보지 야 이상하로서 가위 뭐네 간디세랭이 여야고 셴이라 드니 세진도 그
So therefore, understanding what this knowledge can do for us, then joyfully we should cultivate this wisdom to be able to differentiate between the wholesome and the unwholesome, and we should proceed accordingly.
아니 다 개파를 지겠더니 니네 싫어 여보 여기 지세는 뭔데 시고 돈바를 지고 나로서 맞지 되게 야 빼나 사절라 되네 아니 시근 아니 내선다 뭐다 시종에 양에 남만다 지금도 와스.
So then another thing that I would like to share with you, and this is wisdom that comes from beings that are not only great scholars, but also beings of realization, holy beings. It begins with an analogy, and the analogy is our mind as being like the ground or like the soil. From the ground or the soil, different types of seeds can give rise to different types of plants, both those that are beneficial and those that are poisonous.
오다 시도 야게리를 진신 가로서 사야 시도라 뭐라리 나나나츠바 하리 야고 용근도 와스 메도 나츠바더니 뱀마세바 야고 뭐뭐지 미아레 아니 메기실라서 바리 남만다 할레베 펜도 여기 야서 뭐뭐지 용비아레.
So we understand that when we plant the correct seeds, then the ground acts as the basis for the arising of those good plants, those wholesome plants, edible plants with beautiful flowers and so forth, some plants that are even medicinal and so forth. If we plant correctly, they can arise on the basis of that soil.
오다 아니 다 누가 실세 가라와 아니 되게 실라서 봤더니 나로서 리도 근데 내가 용기겠더니 쉬운 남만다지 린 뭐뭐지 하레스.
And similarly, we also know that on the basis of that same soil, if unwholesome seeds are planted, these can give rise to unwanted plants, plants that are poisonous, that can harm our body or even our mind. These also arise on the basis of the soil.
오다 대지 강가고 용사 때 사질라더니 와슈마레 때네 말아요더니 코로스마 사질마 더한다고 내가 좀 이거 통이야 시원도 와스.
And another thing that we need to state here, and this is a clear phenomena that we can see with our eyes, is that we understand that just as these plants and fruits and so forth, they arise on the basis of the soil. Due to impermanence, as they decay and fall away, they will also dissolve back into the soil. So they arise from the soil and they dissolve back into it.
오다 노라요더니 당길라바 노지 된 노지 아니 세중에 담만다 손수 중에 담만다 노아 중에 담만다 세노는 샤바 노지 바셀트 더 그아레스.
So in terms of our mind, what we need to do is we need to recognize these unwholesome thoughts, these bad thoughts, these suspicions, this stress and so forth, and we need to learn how to identify them so that we can dissolve them back into the earth, back into the ground of the mind.
디스마 오다 아니 손수 두가도 노아 두가르지 페도 메바 이자 칼레칼레 니바 추르토니 뉴르토니 메바소.
So those bad or unwholesome thoughts, we identify them, and then working with antidotes, we counter them, and we are able to diminish them and diminish them and diminish them to the point that they dissolve back into the ground of the mind.
오다 손수 유아가도 노아 니바 유아가르지 냐니네 다 대슈 치르치르 로토소나 니칼레 기바 타툴레 기바 든 칼레칼레 든 기보주주마도 메바 차야야.
And in terms of those good or wholesome thoughts, what we need to do is we need to recognize those, and we need to build them. We need to increase them. We need to build upon our positive potentials. And if we do this, in this way, not only will we be able to achieve more temporary happiness, but we will also be able to work towards stable, ultimate happiness.
오다 대시키겠더니 손수 유아쇼테 가르랭고 스탄다 자시시 모셔와라 나로슬마 지테야치 하레스 데니마 지데마 지테네 나로스 딩고린도
So Geshe said that just regarding this principle, he would like to share some thoughts with you from the great master Shantideva, and then based upon the words of the great Acharya Shantideva, he will share a few more ideas with you.
다 치다 할래비 자 첨보도 다 디기토는 로토서는 알아서 봐줘야 뭐 아니 수자 첨보서 하도 그래. 되는 알아서 네가 여가 강가야 매우 그래.
So Geshe says he hopes that by hearing those words, what he can do is he can by hearing them, you have a good imprint in their mind. You are able to accumulate a vast amount of merit, and then you are able to build upon those positive potentials. So that's why he shares with you the verses of these holy beings.
that's 치들이래. 서로 시비딩와 시비딩와 저도 존대지. 세점데 사완데 봐. 데모 저도 샤반데 비주 소시 세니도 도모샤.
So the verse from Shantideva's Bodhisattvacharyavatara, which Geshe just read, I will read to you in English. Those who wish to destroy the many sorrows of conditioned existence, and to wish all beings to experience a multitude of joys, and those who wish to experience much happiness, should never forsake the awakening mind, or should never forsake bodhicitta.
어따데 치키레키 이나레 치케 물레키 이나레 로토 텐데 요아레스 아까서와 서기 오치는 건조 언도야레스.
So Geshe said that also he just wants to share that with this verse, whether you are a Buddhist believer, a believer in the Dharma or not, there are things here that are beneficial and applicable for you. So everyone can derive benefit.
어따 치키레 물레 치와요 마레스 나로수 강에 강가 로로 나로수 어느 강에 고로 지질라 테네테네 니바치죠 니바텔라 테네테네 나로수 강에 강가
So it's the same for us whether we are a believer or not, in that all of our problems have to arise from causes, right? You won't have a problem or a difficulty arising without a cause. And those causes, they leave these potentials, these imprints for problems within the mind. So this is the same for all of us.
어따 대지 파미야 중앙소야 손스 치크고요. 스카르레스 제대지 셀냐 대대요나 대지라 되는 리버 노다치는.
So what we want to do is, in terms of those causes for difficulties or unhappiness that we have within our mind, we want to figure out a way to purify them. Why do we want to purify them? Because if we don't, then those potentials will stay there and they will eventually ripen into unwanted results, right? Results of unhappiness. So in terms of the first two lines, those who wish to destroy the many sorrows of conditioned existence, it is speaking of this, of these unwholesome potentials. So the next part of the verse, those who wish to experience a multitude of joys and much happiness, here we're talking not just about temporary happiness, but we are talking about a stable, lasting happiness. So Shantideva is saying that if you want this stable, lasting happiness, what do you need to do? And the last part of the verse is that instruction about what you need to cultivate. So what Geshe wants to explain here is that, of course, in the words of Shantideva, one should never forsake the awakening mind, so the mind of bodhicitta. But here, we can understand it according to a principle which applies to everybody, whether you are Buddhist or non-Buddhist. And what do we understand? We understand that kind of this presentation, we don't say bodhicitta, but we say a mind that doesn't perceive any enemy. We have this awareness that any sentient being we encounter is not our enemy, they are our friend. And because they are our friend, we deeply wish for them to have happiness. On the basis of this kind of altruistic mind, not only do we have potential for transformation, but it also becomes a path to a very powerful way to completely purify or clear away negative karma, those causes that Geshe mentioned. So what Geshe would suggest is, of course, ideally we want the love and compassion, the wish for them to be happy and free from suffering. We want to extend this without exception to all sentient beings as much as possible, but perhaps at first it's not possible to extend that love and compassion to all sentient beings. So we can try to focus on something a little bit smaller, all human beings. And if that is still too difficult to fathom, perhaps we could think, may all the beings in my country be happy. And so what are the benefits of cultivating this way of thinking? Well, one of the temporary benefits is when we have this kind of universal wish of love and compassion, we don't have this habit to label beings as enemy or friend. And on this basis, there's a lot less misunderstanding and happier relationships.
오다 수지 쪽에 내고 내시 자야 강가 로로 체리 도탐바 데 디가 문치야 다 디가 지세 주주래 강가 자치모 이비 지세 주주래.
And if you think about this, actually, Buddha Shakyamuni's teaching on seeing all beings as precious and close to oneself, it is a cause which leads to that result, and in that way it is a scientific principle. We can say that it is congruent with science, the teaching there.
그래도 와서 오다 든지 이제 나로서 보이요. 아니 미 지세 다 디세 모범에 아이 생각도 지세 모시해요. 스페랑 간조 리라워티 쉐바이나 간조 사야 투야 대사 가르 이나요. 모시바도 아니 모보지라 되는 지용 그거 알마도 아니 가로 소지메 와스.
So Geshe said there's many reasons why we can see all beings as being close and connected to us, but we're limited for time in this short session, so he'll just explain one easy way to think about this. If we think about the food that we eat, the place where we live, the clothes that we wear, all of the things that we enjoy, these arise solely due to the kindness of others, whether we know them, whether we don't know them. All of the facilities that we have in life, these arise only because of kindnesses of others.
오다 든지 내지 여보 모여 아이사 강기 든지라 되는 가비 문이 시라 고시도야 레와 고시도야 오다 센자 첨부체도스나 오다 니가르기바 다들기바 지는 거래.
So if you can think in this way, then Geshe-la's hope for you is you can build your wisdom, right? You can make your brain more intelligent. You can have this vast way of thinking, and in this way be happier.
오다 내서 든지 여본 거 소노토네 뽑아치미 고네 가디나 세 심밤에 비토네 든지 레가지 거래.
So in this way too, please bring forth from this universal feeling of closeness it brings, bring forth this vast, brave attitude, a brave attitude that does not get discouraged or fearful.
야 뒤지.
Thanks so much. We shall end it there.